We'll kick it off now with the Chrome River Keynote. And I'd like to introduce my friend, longtime business partner, co-founder, CEO of Chrome River, Alan Rich.
Let me add my welcome to Cascade 2014. It's my pleasure to kind of continue a long-standing tradition and introduce you to one more member of the Rich family. I'm honored to have my father here in the audience. Dad, if you'd raise your hand for a second, just so. My father and I have been working together in business my entire career, which started in diapers. And I'm honored to have him here with us today. I think that for those of you who've heard me speak before, I like to tackle big topics. And I don't think there's any bigger topic than the one I want to tackle today, which is how do you build a better business? It's really what all of us are here to do. It's core to what we wake up to do every morning. And I think the way I want to break the problem down is to say, well, businesses are made up of business processes. And I'd like to explore with you how we can improve business processes. And business process improvement is broken down into projects. And we're going to tackle the subject of how do we run projects successfully. So to use one definition, every project is just a problem scheduled for a solution. And so your implementation of Chrome River is an example of a project, hopefully a successful one for all of you. And my task today is to examine how we can use projects to build stronger, more effective, more efficient, more competitive businesses. So I know no better way to tackle a question like this by perhaps starting in reverse and looking at some projects that failed. And perhaps by looking at some failed projects, we can start to understand how to do it right. So my first project that I'm going to deal with happened on November 12th, 1970. A dead 16,000-pound sperm whale washed up on the beach of Central Oregon. Now, in those days, the beaches in Oregon were technically considered part of the state highway system. So the Oregon Highway Division had the responsibility for removing the carcass. So they set up a project team. They said, well, how are we going to remove this dead whale? And they said, well, we're very experienced at running highway projects. We know how to remove big boulders that are on the highway. We use dynamite to do that. So I'm going to show you the video of exactly what happened here.
It had to be said, the Oregon State Highway Division not only had a whale of a problem on its hands, it had a stinking whale of a problem. What to do with one 45-foot, 8-ton whale dead on arrival on the beach near Florence.
It had been so long since a whale had washed up in Lane County, nobody could remember how to get rid of one. So dynamite it was, some 20 cases or a half-ton of it. The hope was that the long-dead Pacific gray whale would be almost disintegrated by the blast.
I'm not sure just exactly how much explosives it'll take to disintegrate this thing so the scavengers, seagulls and crabs and whatnot can clean it up.
It might be concluded that should a whale ever wash ashore in Lane County again, those in charge will not only remember what to do, they'll certainly remember what not to do.
Yep. So that project plan kind of backfired literally, and it blasted chunks of foul-smelling blubber for a quarter mile. In spite of that, most of the carcass, it turned out, remained on the beach. And in the end, they had to go back to the very basic method of digging a hole and burying the carcass. Now, some of us have more mundane projects to do, so I thought maybe we'd look at a second project as an example. And this one's in the closer to my heart. It's in the area of product development. So the man that you're looking at here is Sir Clive Sinclair. He was one of the pioneers of the computing industry. Some of you may remember the Sinclair personal computer in the UK. You can think of him in today's terms as sort of England's Elon Musk. Like Elon was the founder of PayPal and now is chairman of Tesla Motors. Well, Mr. Sinclair, Sir Sinclair, also wanted to turn his talents to the issue of transportation. So I'd like to show you the product that he built.
The Sinclair C5, a whole new way to get about. A safe, reliable, pollution-free electric vehicle which can be driven on the road by anyone, 14 and over. A traffic-compatible mode of transport that will carry you up to 20 miles on one battery, giving 1,000 miles for the cost of a gallon of petrol, safely and reliably at 15 miles an hour. It's the ideal vehicle for the whole family. For commuters, it's a quick and easy way to get to the station. At 20 miles for 5 pence, it's very economical, and parking couldn't be easier. With a seating height the same as a family car, visibility is extremely good all round. For that quick trip to the shops, the C5 will save you time and effort. A large capacity boot gives plenty of space for all your purchases. For young people, too, the C5 is...
I don't think they ever saw my wife come back from Costco. They consider that the large capacity boot. The project plan seemed to also have forgotten that it rains in England. It left out a reverse gear. It couldn't go uphill. And you didn't exactly feel safe in the London traffic with that. The Sinclair Vehicle Division went bankrupt about 11 months after they started production. So maybe from just looking at those two examples, we can start to see a pattern. We'll try to build on that a little bit. You might say that the project management team was overly confident. Perhaps they built up unrealistic expectations from the stakeholders in their project. But the key thing that I wanted to show you there is that they failed to really understand all the requirements. I'll get my one more example that I'd like to share with you. This one closer to our day. How many of you have heard of healthcare.gov? These are some of the most famous error screens in the United States. You know that when the President of the United States has to stand up on national television and apologize for an IT project gone wrong, that something really bad has happened. Now, it was a tremendously ambitious project. It involved multiple jurisdictions, very complicated business rules, the interaction of a lot of different entities and technical systems. But certainly, it was a failure, at least initially. What went wrong? I don't know that we really know what went wrong, but I think 3 things everybody agrees to. One is they seriously underestimated the volumes. Number 2, and the one that perhaps we'll focus on more later, is they failed to thoroughly test the system. And number 3, the teams were apparently in silos and failed to really adequately communicate together as a single joint project team. So you might think that my 3 examples are the exceptions, and that most projects are in fact successful. So I don't think that is in fact the reality. In a 2008 study of the General Accounting Office of federal projects, they said of the 840 federally funded projects that they looked at, 49% of them were either poorly planned, poorly performing, or I'm afraid both of those. In the private sector, There's an organization called the Information Systems Audit and Control Association that found that a full 43% of the 400 people that responded to their survey said that their organizations had had recent IT project failures. So it must be really hard to do projects. And I think all of us in this room have experienced that. And my goal today is try to get at the root cause of this and see if we can find a better way to run a project. So I think that our idea of a business process started in 1914. In 1914, Henry Ford opened the Highland Park, Michigan plant for the construction of the Model T Ford. It was a tremendous success. The plant was able to produce a Model T in 93 minutes, roughly 1/8 of the amount of time it ever took to build a car. And it has become our mental model of what an efficient business process is. Raw materials came in one side of the factory, machines cranked out parts, and Model Ts flowed outside the other end of the process. It seemed a modern invention of the best possible American business process. But in hindsight, it turned out to be a very special case. Henry Ford had thought that he had built and designed the ideal car in 1908, and no changes would ever be needed. So, the plant had no capacity for model changeovers. Famously, he believed that there were no options required. Every car was identically the same. Every machine was dedicated to cranking out a single part, and he assumed that there would always be more demand than the number of cars that he could produce. By the 1920s, it was already clear that the Highland Park model of assembly line production was never going to work. He changed to a totally different model of business process, one I'm afraid haunted the American manufacturing industry all the way to our day. But our point is that he built what we still think of as an ideal business process. Inputs coming in, outputs flowing out the other end, human beings having to make almost no decisions anywhere along in the process. So let's look now, a good 40, 50 years later, to the next really big change in business processes. The Bible of this was a book by Michael Hammer and James Champy called Reengineering the Corporation, a manifesto for business revolution. So let me tell you how Mr. Hammer and Mr. Champy defined reengineering. Reengineering is the fundamental rethinking and radical redesign of business processes to achieve dramatic improvements in critical contemporary measures of performance such as cost, quality, service, and speed. So they believed that the way to fix a business is blow it up, right? The critical word over here is radical. They wanted to make big changes. Come into a company, bring in an army of consultants, and look how to do it better. They built process maps. They've laid off dozens, hundreds of people in the process. By the time the mid-90s came around, there was a $50 billion consulting industry helping companies re-engineer their business processes. And within a couple of years after that, the fad was over, and even the originators of the plan said it was a complete failure. CSC Index, one of the leading consultants, reported that 99 of the 99 projects that they managed to get to completion, over 67% of them produced, in their own terms, either mediocre or no results. Business reengineering had become a code word for laying off people. People were just completely ignored in the process. It was a system that delivered mainly promises and expectations, but not results. One originator of the process kind of compared business process reengineering to a football team. In the ideal business process, it had gone from an assembly line to a coach who stands on the side, sees what's happening on the field, passes the play to his players who perfectly execute the plan. If only business would be like that, right? The coach would tell us what to do and the business would run smoothly. But it isn't like that. Even Chrome River has a re-engineering story failure. It's kind of one of the legendary stories told by our implementation team. It's a pretty significant size company that had signed up with us, and they were having their big launch meeting. So the whole accounts payable team was brought into the conference room, some on the telephone. The CFO walked into the room, and he made an announcement that this Chrome River project was vital to the success of the finance organization. It was critical for their business improvement program. It was part of their cost containment measure, and he was predicting that over 50% of the people in the accounts payable department would be able to leave their jobs. That, unfortunately, is not one of our current live customers today. You can imagine that that project never really made it off the ground, right? And it's because it completely ignored the human element of what a successful project is all about. So I'd like to explore with you a little bit, not only why projects are so hard, but why IT projects are exceedingly difficult. So let's look at another mental model. Most of us have been influenced by Microsoft Project more than we ever realized. We think of a business project as a Gantt chart. Successfully complete task number 1, and then you can go do task number 2. Successfully complete tasks number 2 and 3, you can go to task number 4. If we can just follow the Gantt chart, hire a project manager, we're sure to successfully implement this project. But really, it's not like that. I think the more accurate picture is the one on the right. On this picture on the right, every little purple dot is a business decision that needed to be made. Thousands, hundreds of thousands sometimes of individual little business decisions need to be made every single day in a big project. And they're all related. And the problem is, in this web of interconnected decisions, there's no right and wrong. Right? It's not clear which decision was the right decision and which is the wrong one. There's no clear way of defining it. Frequently, we're dealing with new technologies, and there's uncertainty inherent in the very decisions that we're making. The Gantt chart view is so simplistic that it leads to dangerous project assumptions. So I think actually there is a solution. You know, you paid your admission, I'm going to give you the answer now. So I think there's 2 solutions over here, and they're connected. You can't pick one without the other. There are 2 methods of solving the problem. So method number 1 is every project needs a why statement. Every project needs a clear reason for its existence. If a team settles on a misguided solution and pursues that with great enthusiasm, they'll finish the project, but it won't work. Think of our Oregon highway team. The goal was not to clear the highway. The goal should have been to remove the whale. Right? The goal wasn't to build an electric car for the sake of technology. It was to improve personal transportation. It's really hard to build a good why statement. Let's just think of our own Chrome River expense implementations. What was your goal? You could have said it was paying people faster, reducing fraud, ensuring compliance, eliminating paper, reducing headcount, avoiding the rekeying of data, trying to accurately code expenses to the general ledger, trying to pay employees by ACH instead of check, or implementing a corporate credit card. You can't just say it's to do everything. You have to pick a why statement. Motivate the team. That's what reminds the stakeholders of why they're doing the project. Or as one person put it, it's what compelled this project into existence. If you have a clear why statement, that becomes the guiding principle that holds the project together. So having that, you still don't have the magic solution though. you still have the problem of a web of interconnected decisions. So I think solution number 2 is probably one of the most popular words in the IT industry. It's being agile. So I have a definition that I love. Agile is not about working fast, but about finding elegantly simple solutions to business problems. Now, the follow-on question to that is, well, how do you do that? How do you find an elegantly simple solution to your business problem? I think there's multiple components of that. But number 1 is very short iterative cycles. So the key is, don't try to build a total solution. Don't try to solve the big picture. Just try to find the 80% solution. And then let people handle the exceptions and one-off solutions. Don't try to have the Chrome River software or whatever software we're working with solve every edge case that you're working on. Get to 80%, deliver it, get feedback from your users, and continue the process. Let me show you a diagram of how that agile process looks. It really has 3 stages. Stage number 1 is define. That's building your why statement. That's determining what you're trying to do and what your budget is. Stage number 2 is designing the process, making sure you have it thought out. Stage number 3 is building, testing, documenting, and delivering it to the end users. This whole cycle in an agile process should probably never exceed 90 to 120 days. Then, once you've delivered something to your users, turn around, get their feedback, iterate it again, design, build, deliver again. Chrome River was built on this agile philosophy, and we're still trying to perfect it. We release every 2 weeks. Why? Because we want to deliver to you small pieces of functionality regularly, all the time. We want to get your feedback. Then we tweak it again. 2 weeks later, we'll deliver it again. Right? That's the Chrome River philosophy. It's how we built all of our products. And I believe it's how every single IT project should be run. Kind of go back and think if the healthcare.gov project had been run by Chrome River. Kind of a scary thought. What would we have had to do? Right? We would have built a little tiny piece, delivered it, seen if it worked, got the next piece out, delivered it again, and piece by piece, component by component, we would have built it till the end. It would have been a fully tested, deliverable system. At one of our first user conferences, I was standing at the reception, much like we were last night, and one of the people came to me and said, I want to tell you something. We have a term at our company. We say that we won't undertake any new IT project unless it's Chrome River-ish. So I've been thinking ever since that conversation, well, what does Chrome River-ish really mean? Right? And I'd like to give you 4 definitions of what makes a project Chrome River-ish. One is that the end result is that the users have to be delighted by the experience. I can't tell you how many people come to us and now say, people like to do expense reports. We never thought it would be possible. It has to be intuitive. We're trying to solve somebody's day-to-day problem. If you have to train them for days on how to do that, something's wrong. Number 3, there should be more than one way to do something. If you think about the Chrome River system, there's multiple ways to approve, there's multiple ways to get receipts into the system, there's multiple ways to process images, there's lots of ways to accomplish things, and each person finds what's right for them. And number 4 is be agile. The whole Chrome River philosophy is about deliver something, then change your compliance rules, tighten them up, change your routing rules, right? Add fields to the screen, take fields off of the screen. Keep iterating regularly over and over again instead of trying to build the perfect ultimate system up front. I think if you do that, you have an agile system that will deliver real value to your end users. John Shook is chairman and CEO of a consulting organization called the Lean Enterprise Institute. As a young man in his 20s, he went to Japan to learn how Japanese companies operate. He ended up working at Toyota and became a leading proponent of what was then called the Toyota manufacturing system. Toyota and General Motors ended up putting a joint venture together to build Corollas, I believe, in Fremont, California. And it turned out to be probably the most successful General Motors plant in the United States. Today, that plant, for some of you who've been there, is the Tesla factory. So his job was to bring the Toyota manufacturing system and train American workers in how to do it. Now, for those of you who have heard a little bit about lean manufacturing, it's very similar in a manufacturing world to what we've been talking about, agile, in a business process. When he started working with Americans on the factory floor, he found a common theme. He found that he could ask a U.S. worker, "How are things going?" And you'll almost always get the same answer. I'll click the slide and I'll bet you know what it is. Everybody says, "No problem." But in the Toyota system, no problem is a problem. Because the whole idea is that there are always problems, right? There's always a better way to do things. So I hope when you go back to your offices, you'll remember to be Chrome River-ish. You should use expense and invoice to build agile business processes that deliver real value. Then use that agile methodology on every other part of your business. And just remember, there's always a better way.